Welcome to Mercer Moments in American History. Today's program is called the original 13th Amendment, the original 13th Amendment to our United States Constitution. Well, Mr. Ken Mercer, everyone knows the 13th, that was the one to abolish human slavery and involuntary servitude, right? Well, that's true. But did you know there was an original 13th Amendment? It was actually passed by the United States House of Representatives in 1861. It was passed by the United States Senate. It actually begun ratification to the states. And it happened 2 days before the March 4th inauguration of this brand new president. His name was Abraham Lincoln. And the purpose of this amendment, listen carefully, the purpose was to abolish any future attempt by the federal government to abolish human slavery. I'm not giving you some George Orwell, the author of the book 1984, some double speak. No, listen carefully. The purpose of the amendment before the inauguration of Abraham Lincoln, a constitutional amendment to abolish any future attempt by the federal government to abolish human slavery. It's one of those pieces of American history that for some reason have been erased. It's been deleted from our textbooks, from our classrooms. Well, I'm bringing those back. My name is Ken Mercer. I'm known as the Minister of Education. I'm very proud of the fact I've been known for 16 years as an elected official as being a champion for moms and dads and your right for a clear and transparent process to see what's being taught in the classroom to your precious sons and daughters. And I'm also a champion for true and accurate United States history. You know, too many things have been revised, rewritten, and now I'm finding out they're being erased or deleted. Well, those are important parts of history we should all learn about. We can learn from those things. I always begin every session with 2 quick asks. First, if you enjoyed today's session, please hit the like or subscribe button. It does not cost you anything, but it's the best way you have of telling our sponsors that Mercer Moments in American History is making a difference. And secondly, I've always given a shout out every day to one state and one school. Today it's Notre Dame of Indiana. If you will, all the Catholic universities in the United States of America, please pray for those young men and young women of great faith and values who love God and who love our country in today's politically charged environment where every day their faith and values is being attacked. Pray for these young men and women. Well, again, today's session is called the original 13th Amendment. Are you ready? Well, let's level set. It was the year 1860, November 6th, and it was an historic event. It was the election of this new guy named Abraham Lincoln. He was the first Republican ever elected. The Republican Party just started in 1854. So have a new party, have a president 6 years later was unheard of. And Abraham did not get the majority of the vote, the plurality, but he won the Electoral College. But again, historically, he was the first Republican president. And again, the Republican Party was just 6 years old. The Republican Party had probably 2 major planks. One, it wanted to stop the expansion of slavery. Not being political, but being honest, the Democrat Party wanted to expand slavery all the way from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean to this new territory called California, Oregon, Washington State. Again, they wanted to expand slavery. So the primary plank of this new Republican Party was to stop the expansion of slavery and eventually to abolish human slavery. You know, it's interesting, if you study what happened later on in the Civil War, you'll find that, I believe, and please fact check me, I've seen so many different numbers, but apparently 86% of the soldiers on the Southern side, the Confederate side, never owned slaves. And yet the Civil War, as you'll see in a moment, was all about slavery. But with the election of Abraham Lincoln, if you're a Southern slaveholder, you're pretty scared of this new guy. What's he going to bring? There are so many scared people, even though the election was November 6th, by December 20th, 5 days before Christmas, South Carolina became the very first state to secede. secede from the Union to leave our country. Now, when South Carolina seceded from the Union, they gave at least two primary reasons for leaving. Number one, they said the non-slaveholding states were hostile to the institution of slavery. The northern states, the non-slaveholding states, were hostile to the institute of slavery. And secondly, they said this new guy who's been elected, now who is the new guy? Abraham Lincoln. His opinions and purposes are hostile to slavery. Again, South Carolina, the first state to leave, to make it very clear, it was about slavery. The opinions and the purposes of Abraham Lincoln are hostile to slavery. So South Carolina became the first state to leave, again, just a few weeks after the election of Abraham Lincoln, 5 days before Christmas. There's a transition period, as you know. The election in November, back then, the inauguration was actually March the 4th, 1861. So those few months of transition, James Buchanan, a Democrat, was the current president, and he would remain president until the inauguration. But on January 14th, 1861, again, we have a transition. And again, the transition was the inauguration was March the 4th. Buchanan was still president, and he was very concerned about what was going on regarding slavery. So he began to push for this new amendment to abolish any attempt to ever abolish slavery. He was talking to members of the House and Senate, and the Democrats still had strong majorities in the House and Senate. As before, the 11 Democrat states left to form the Confederacy. So they still had strong majorities in the House and Senate. And on February 28th, the last day of February, the United States House had passed an amendment by a vote of 133 to 65 for just that, an amendment to abolish any future attempt by the federal government to abolish slavery. Now, remember, in the United States House and Senate, what's the requirement? Is it 51% or 2/3? Well, hopefully your answer is 2/3 to pass a constitutional amendment, and it's barely passed that at 133 to 65, just past that threshold. Then it went to the Senate. It went to the Senate on March 2nd, 2 days before the inauguration. The amendment passed the Senate by a vote of 24 to 12. There were 36 senators, and 2/3 was what? Well, 24 of 36. So they got exactly what they needed. Now, 2 days later, that was March the 2nd, in the United States Senate, was the inauguration of who? Abraham Lincoln. So they kind of, in your face, Lincoln, guess what? The House and Senate already passed a constitutional amendment to abolish any attempt by you and your people to ever abolish slavery, including abolishing the expansion of slavery. And Lincoln, as president, you can't veto it because a constitutional amendment has already come with 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate. After 2/3 of the House and Senate, it goes to the states. And of course, the requirement for ratification by the states, the state legislatures, is what? 51% or 2/3? 75%. A supermajority. Our Constitution is so important, it requires 75% of the states to ratify. Of course, what happened then? Did they ever get to 3/4 of the states? Well, remember South Carolina has seceded from the Union? Before the Lincoln inauguration and a few weeks after, by then 11 states, 11 of the Southern Democrat pro-slavery states had left the Union to form their own country. And of course, you cannot be a senator or representative in the pro-slavery Confederacy and the Union North. Now, 11 states, how many senators for each state? 2. That's 22 senators are now gone who went to the Confederacy, no longer part of the United States, and the entire congressional delegations. So even though it began the ratification process, and a couple states had passed it. By the way, if it had gone to those 11 southern states, again, an amendment to abolish any attempt to abolish slavery, obviously those 11 states would have passed that, right? But again, that 3/4 threshold, they were not there. Now, an interesting assignment might be for the future. You can help me out. I cannot find where this original 13th Amendment was actually killed, tabled, whatever happened to it. Is it still alive out there? I've called around, I've looked on, where is it at? Hopefully, I mean, we would never come back and have an amendment to abolish the abolishment of slavery, right? But it'd be an interesting civics assignment if it's still out there alive in some fashion. That'd be a great national civics project to contact our members of the House and U.S. Senate and say, hey, can we bring this back up for a vote? I would assume it'd be unanimous that we would all be opposed to any amendment to abolish the abolishment of slavery. Just a thought. Again, I cannot find where that's been finally killed. Is it still alive somewhere? Is it sitting out somewhere? This original 13th Amendment. I hope you enjoyed today's program, Mercer, Moments in American History, the original 13th Amendment. Again, the amendment was passed by 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate. It was a very strong Democrat pro-slavery majority at that time in the 1860-61 timeframe. Is a reaction to the election of the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, and the Republican platform, which primarily wanted to stop the expansion of slavery and again wanted to eventually abolish all human slavery. It had gone to the states for ratification. It actually began the ratification process, and then the Civil War happened, and there's a proverbial rest of the story. I hope you enjoyed today's program. As always, I plead with you, please hit the like or subscribe button. It's the best way we have of telling our sponsors that Mercer Moments in American History is making a difference. You know, today's program is really about one of those points of time in United States history, a point in time that's been erased and deleted from our classrooms, from our textbooks. Because think about it, America was going to go one way or the other. We had two amendments, two 13 amendments. Both of them passed the U.S. House by 2/3. Each one passed the U.S. Senate by 2/3. Each one had begun the process of ratification to our states. One amendment said we would be pro-freedom. America would be pro-freedom. The other one said, no, America is going to be pro-slavery, and we're going to keep slavery and expand slavery. It's an incredible point in time of what happened in America. I'll close you with this. Without any hesitation whatsoever, I'll tell you that I believe it's the people of faith in America who love God, who pushed for the amendment that we know, people of faith who won and gave us the 13th Amendment to our Constitution that abolishes human slavery and abolishes involuntary servitude. You know, I've always closed by saying that I believe that the strength of America, it is our faith and our values coupled with our worship. That makes us so powerful, so strong. Why? Because in a place called the United States of America, in God, we still trust. Right here in America, in God, we still trust. Thank you. God bless you.